Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we have a very special guest. We have Steelers defensive tackle Breiden Fehoko. He's coming on the channel to talk some ball prior to him heading off to training camp in Latrobe. Really excited about this one, Breiden. Appreciate you taking the time out, man. How you doing? How are you enjoying the dead period so far?
It's going great. Appreciate you for having me on. I'm enjoying it. Getting good work in, training, all the above. Being a dad, being a new dad, so it's been quite the adjustment to come home and get the work in, prepare for Latrobe, but then also go make a bottle and put a baby to bed at the same time. But I wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Those daddy duties, man, they're legit. As a father of, I got a 4-year-old and an 8-month-old, man. They keep you on your toes at all times. So that's awesome, man. I'm glad that you're getting, a little bit of downtime for you to kind of spend some time with your family before, everything kind of gets pretty crazy. But, really first things first, man, I wanted to ask you about, just your decision to sign with the Steelers, 2 off seasons ago during free agency. What originally led you to choosing this particular destination, and why did you think it was a good fit for your skill set?
I've always been a fan of the Steelers. I've always been fond of how they play football. There's a certain way, and especially being here for the last year and a half, the identity of being a Pittsburgh Steeler has, really instilled itself in me. But going back to free agency, the opportunity to play in Pittsburgh was there, and I didn't feel like the other suitors were necessarily a good fit for me, especially with Pittsburgh running a 3-4. And mainly my last season in LA, I played mostly nose tackle. I mean, my first 2 years, I kind of played along the line from, the 5 technique all the way up until the shade and the 0. But, getting that opportunity to play for a system that, not just of recently, but you look back into the early 2000s, they've been running the 3-4 and have been really successful at it. And so, being familiar with the scheme and just the consistency of having somebody like Coach T there made it a no-brainer to come to Pittsburgh.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a perfect segue. Kind of my next question. I've been really fortunate to cover the NFL Combine for the last several years. And it's always interesting to hear guys talk about their reactions kind of to meeting and getting to know Mike Tomlin throughout that process. I feel like his track record kind of speaks for itself. But what do you think makes him different? You've played for a lot of different coaches over your football career.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that he maybe doesn't get enough credit for in terms of keeping this team competitive year over year?
I think a lot of transparency. Being here and sitting in those meetings every day, getting to be one-on-one with Coach T at times, whenever he's pulling you aside and talking to you. And I think what stands out to me is he's the same way with everybody, from, the top of the roster, the first person in the building to the last person in the building. Coach T treats everybody with respect. Coach T lets everybody know that, if you're doing your job to the best of your ability, he's going to applaud you. And if you need to pick it up, he's going to let you know. He also not just is a great coach of football and teaching you about the game and the X's and O's, but, he's a great mentor in life. More than just being a football player, I've become such a better man just being in that building every day around him. And you look at the staff he surrounds himself with, everybody's like-minded. Whether there is, for me, this past offseason was, being a new father, and that was a huge transition for me. And, there was a lot of nerves going into that. And, me and Coach T talked, and, he was like, man, that's one of the best times of your life. Enjoy it. Take lots of pictures. And so, he let me, he excused me from that last week of OTAs. And of course it's voluntarily, you don't have to be there, but,
Sure.
For me to get that, approval of, he was like, man, go be a dad, don't worry about all this stuff is going to be here. Come back whenever you're ready. And so to have that support was awesome. And just being around him, he's a great guy, and, just the best coach I've ever been around in my football career, hands down.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you talk about the culture. I mean, that starts at the top, right? Like, I feel like, the results speak for themselves, but I've had so
Hmm.
many like players and like people that have been surrounded by him, tell me similar things, just like some of the ways that he can impact your life, not just football related. It's pretty inspirational, honestly. But, let's go back a little bit. You were a starter for that LSU championship team back in 2019. One of the greatest teams really of all time, definitely of like my era. The SEC is known for getting guys ready to play at the NFL
Yeah.
level, but I'm kind of curious if you had a welcome to the NFL type of moment, or maybe earlier in your career, or if there was anything that surprised you about the transition to the pros.
I think from a physical standpoint, I think I've always been more than ready. I felt like I've always been one of the strongest guys physically, but I think the biggest disadvantage I was at early in my career was the mental part of the game. And so coming to the NFL, everything just moves faster, right? The game's faster. It's more simplified than college. But how simplified it is guys do their job to the very best every single play, down in, down out. And that's what you're getting every play. That's the difference between college and the NFL is in college, you can get away with talent. You can get away with having bad technique. You can get away with not going full speed and still being able to dominate your opponent, right? But in the NFL, man, like when you got, top tier offensive linemen lined up against you in front of you, when you got running backs who are, you know, trying to depend on if you're going to stay in this gap and then cut back to another gap to make you look silly, that's the difference. And um, I had to understand quick that if I don't mentally grasp this game, I won't be able to play to my full potential. I won't be able to play fast. And I look back to, um, my last year playing in 2022 and arguably, my most productive year in the NFL. I think a big reason why I was able to play so well that year for the Chargers in the time being was because of one, I was physically ready from college, but two, mental reps and the mental capacity I've been able to develop over time in the NFL, just being able to learn more, put more into my toolbox. And then ultimately, even this past year, man, like, I know I didn't get to play as much as I wanted, um, in the role I wanted, but learning under, Coach Dunbar, learning under, Coach Martin and Cam and Larry and TJ and Alex and those guys, like, man, I already know my game just took a whole another step in a direction that I really wanted it to go in.
Yeah, that's awesome too. Like you talk about just the preparation, when you're not playing, you're not getting a helmet on game day sometimes. Like that can be tough to, stay locked in. I think that needs to be appreciated. But you brought up defensive line coach Carl Dunbar. Yeah, man, I have so much respect for his game.
Mhm.
I think he's been such an integral part really of the Steelers defensive success, year over year, the way he's developed guys and, brought younger guys into prominent roles in the league. But what's that been like playing for him? And what are some of the things that he kind of stresses to you guys like on a regular basis along the D line?
Coach Dunbar is always going to stress technique. He's always going to stress the fundamentals. That's a given with Coach Dunbar. Since I've been with him, well, let me rephrase this. Before I got to Pittsburgh, I felt like I knew what I was and who I was as a player, and I felt like I kind of already had a toolbox that wouldn't necessarily say I needed coaching, but I felt like it was to the point where I was like, I could play, But being under Coach Dunbar for the last year, learning with him, last OTAs, getting to Latrobe, and ultimately taking that whole season last year and even this off season of getting with him, getting to know what I need to work on, changing my body, becoming a better pass rusher, understanding the game from a whole new perspective of what I thought I knew, and then how much more I put into that toolbox this year just made it so much more lethal for me as a defensive lineman to, be more cerebral on the field, knowing when I can take risks, knowing how to play a certain technique a better way than what I thought I knew. Coach Dunbar's played a huge role into that. And, I'm continuing to develop every day. I get the chance to be in those meeting rooms with him, and um, being around guys like Cam who have been with him for, 6 years now, 7 years, I believe,
Right.
that Coach Dunbar's been with the Steelers. It's amazing because you see the progress, right? You see the process of what he's put them through and what they've been able to accomplish. And I'm excited. I can't wait to dive into year 2 in Latrobe under him and see where this season takes us.
I think too, like his track record, like of
Mm.
developing guy, like helping guys like can reach a different level
Hmm.
throughout their careers. I think it goes a long way too. Like when you get young guys incorporated into your rooms, like the track record's there. You can see where he can take your game to as long as you kind of follow the coaching and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to ask you too, like when you entered the NFL, 2020, 2021. The NFL was super wide zone heavy, and to an extent, it still is. The Steelers, obviously, you've seen it. Arthur Smith's still running a ton of zone.
Yeah.
But more and more teams, I feel like, are kind of shifting back a little bit into more gap and power concepts. We saw that with the Rams last year. As a 3-4 nose tackle that's playing in that zero technique, what are some key coaching points for you, like when you're facing a team that's maybe really zone heavy, or maybe a team that leans into more like gap or power, like the Rams or maybe like the Ravens?
Yeah, so I think the NFL is kind of in a evolving circle, right? Um, Early in my career, you're correct. The NFL was very zone heavy. You look at guys like Todd Gurley and the Rams back when
Yep.
they were making a run against the Patriots that year. You look at guys like who was that running? I'm not. He was young Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas when I think he had the rushing record. I'm not sure, but bottom line is the zone heavy teams they were trying to get you out in space, right? They wanted to
Hmm.
see how athletic your big boys were, if they could move east and west, if you could get on your horses and chase down a ball carrier 5-6 yards down the line of scrimmage. And get out of this, phone booth mentality of just trying to beat
Right.
up on people every play. And so what that did was it caused the NFL to go and draft more athletes, draft the leaner defensive linemen, the longer arms, the 6'4", 6'5" guys who can run 4.7 40s, the 4.8 40-yard dashes, the freaks, as you call it. And there's always going to be a need for athletes in the NFL. You never pass up on a good athlete because the ceiling's always high. But the only way you balance out speed in the NFL is with power. And so you see now where last year the Rams, heavy duo team, Baltimore,
Right.
heavy gap scheme, heavy power, heavy counter, heavy buck sweep. They run whatever gap scheme play you name it, they're running it. You balance out speed with power, right? You keep the athletes off the field, or you get the not smaller, but you get the leaner defensive lineman in a position they don't want to be in versus 330-pound offensive linemen, and you just keep beating up on them. And so understanding, going back to your question, right? How do you prepare for it? How do you see it? Understanding what type of scheme you're getting that week, and understanding that the game's always changing. And if you're not changing as a player, you're going to fall behind the 8 ball really quick. And so, last year I was really focused on, being a run plugger, right? Because that
Right.
was, my whole mantra. And that's what I've been known in the NFL for my first 3 years in the career. But this year has been more so evolve into a true defensive tackle role. Not just be a 2-down guy, but play, nickel downs, be able to play first and second down in shorter yardage, being able to play second down and long in nickel packages, always evolving. If you're not, then, like I said, you're going to fall behind the 8 ball really quick.
Yeah. You mentioned just like the NFL, it's so cyclical in nature. You know what I'm saying? Like we see these cycles of, concepts, like nothing's new in the NFL. It's just stuff just goes in circles, really. It's what it's all about. And I think you bring up a good point too, like just consistently evolving your game. That's really the only way that you're gonna be able to stay on the field and ahead of the curve, not just from a coaching standpoint, but from a player standpoint too. But for your preparation, like what are some things that you're looking for, just specifically, when you're watching an opponent's film leaning into game day? Are you trying to pick up tendencies maybe from the center, or maybe certain clues about how the offense is going to try to attack? Is that down and distance, certain personnels? Like, what's that kind of process like for you?
Yeah, I like to look at, as an interior defensive lineman, the first thing I always look at is always the run tape. That's the first thing, like I turn on a Monday. Even last year when I wasn't playing, I'm always watching the opponents. Like first game of the season, we playing San Fran. First thing I turned on was their run tape, and I looked at their center and their guards. I look at their stances, right? First thing I check is, are they narrow stances or are they wide stances? If they're narrow stances, that means they like to run off the ball. They're going east and west. And then their depth, how far they line up. Some offensive linemen will line up, with their head breaking the center's butt. Some will line up more on the line of scrimmage, crowding it. Some will scoot back. And all these things you kind of have to process, right? And so, just for example, last year we played San Fran. I wasn't playing, but when I did my scouting report, I saw that they had Jake Brendel at center. I saw he was about 6'2", 6'3", 290, and just from his measurables, I knew that he wasn't going to be a downhill mauler type of center. And just from playing him in the past, the year prior, I knew he's a big wide zone guy. He's a zone guy that likes to get on the edge, likes to reach guys, likes to get his hat, play side, really try to reach you if he can. And those are things you have to pick up, right? Because every week you're going to face somebody different. Jake Brendel, the center from San Fran, is not going to be Tyler Linderbaum from Baltimore or Ted Karras or whoever the center is in Cincy, and Ethan Posick in Cleveland, right? Every one of them is going to be different. Every one of them is going to play differently according to their scheme. And you just got to be able to pick up on, how they're snapping the ball, right? Some centers, they like to head nod, right? And some use a fake head nod. My rookie year, Alex Mack was playing for the Falcons. He was huge on and then snap it. And so, I thought I had a key one game when we were playing. It wasn't Alex Mack, but another center did it. It was the Patriots my rookie year when David Andrews did it. And David Andrews was he would look right, look left, look down, and then he'd snap it. And so me being a rookie, I was like, hey, I got something. Very first time he did that, I jump off sides, right? They give a dummy count. Cam gives a dummy count. And that was kind of like my welcome to the NFL moment. But, just understanding that everybody has, patterns and what they do. And we do the same thing as defensive line too. They study us, right? If I have a certain stance or, I don't want to go into depth too much about it and give all the little secrets, but everybody has certain patterns in how they play football, and just being able to pick up on these tendencies can really help you take your game to the next level.
Yeah. And you mentioned too, like, you've had that reputation as kind of like a plugger, like a run stopping defensive tackle, early on in your career, but you're really wanting to evolve kind of as a pass rusher. Like, what do those steps look like for you? Is that body transformation, or is that adding different moves to your repertoire, or what's really gone into that process throughout the offseason?
Yeah. So for me, this offseason, first and foremost, I think I had to change my body. Right. Just change how my body moved, change how my body was function, bending, because you can train all you want and you can try to work moves and put a lot of that into your toolbox. But if you never train your body to understand that if you don't get your body a certain way or move in a certain way, the move won't work. Right. Not everybody can throw a cross chop. Everybody can't throw a spin like Alex Highsmith. Everybody can't throw a stutter bull rush, right? You have to get your body into position to do so. And one thing for me was, I think last year when I first signed with Pittsburgh last year in April, I think I was 326, 327. And then this year I've been at, I want to say 298, 299. And just, the difference in being able to, now I can put more moves in my toolbox. Why? Because my body is allowing myself to do it, right? I can kind of turn the edge a little better. I'm not saying I'm Aaron Donald, right? I'm not saying I'm Cam Hayward and Larry Ogunjobi, but understanding that, okay, now I can put more on my plate from a pass rush perspective versus just trying to bull rush everybody, like I was doing in the past. So that was the biggest step for me this offseason. It's helped. I can't wait to put it into fruition when we get into Latrobe and, just kind of see all the hard work, come to light.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to see that, man. That's definitely encouraging for me because, the Steelers lost a couple guys, on the defensive line. See Armon Watts, I thought had a pretty solid year last year. He went elsewhere, got a nice contract for himself. And, there's a lot of snaps to be had behind the starters that you mentioned. Guys like Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi. I'm really excited about what that defensive line is going to look like. But, those guys can't play 100% of the snaps. So I'm really excited about, some of the depth pieces kind of getting more of an opportunity this year. But you've been around some great quarterbacks, like you've already talked about your time with the Chargers. You play with Justin Herbert, play with Joe Burrow and Patrick Mahomes in college from your time at Texas Tech, right? So and you've just been around the game for so long, like, you know what it's supposed to look like from the quarterback position. Everybody in Pittsburgh right now is talking about the quarterback room, like, what's it looking like? I just want to know, like, what are your initial thoughts kind of on Russell Wilson and then Justin Fields as well?
I'll go into detail without going into too much detail, but
Sure.
first off, Russ, hell of a leader. One thing I've always been around good quarterbacks, and what makes them successful is the leadership quality and that characteristic,
Absolutely.
right? You can't fake it. Either you got it or you don't. Russ has got it. Jay Fields has got it. Seeing those two come to work every day, right? Those who are pushing each other. Just to have two phenomenal athletes now at the quarterback position, I think can open up and unlock the offense. And, with the addition of, Coach Smith and the free agents they've signed this offseason, I can't wait to see what we do in Latrobe. I'm always joking with Arthur Smith about it, when we're at OTAs and talking about, like, man, can y'all just stop the wide zone? Like, I'm tired of having to play against it, playing against Art when he was at Atlanta, and, getting a little bit of Tennessee when he was there in that system, and, just seeing what he was able to do and success with it. But, just seeing Russ and seeing Jay Fields and seeing those two interact with, the rest of the offensive guys, and seeing how everybody's kind of bought into both of them has been awesome to see. And, I can't wait to see, how far we go this year as a team, starting off when we get to Latrobe, and then, week 1 in Atlanta.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely to hear, the guys buying in, because a lot of changes on the offensive side of the ball, man. You mentioned the offensive coordinator, the new quarterback room. It's going to look a lot different. And I think there's room for optimism around that, right? Like, I'm really excited about seeing what the final product's going to look like. I don't know that I've ever been this excited for preseason football, just to see what the offense looks like when it all comes together, and excited to see you guys, compete in Latrobe. But, just two more questions for you. Just on the defensive side of the ball specifically, you've had the chance now through minicamp, OTAs, to be around the guys. Who's a guy other than yourself? You've talked about, improvements that you've made in your game, but, like, who's a guy that you think is going to have, like, a really strong, maybe like a breakout caliber season?
Defensively or offensively?
Either you can give both. Either doesn't matter.
Defensively, who I'm really excited about? I'm really excited about Corey Trice.
Okay, I love to hear that.
I'm really excited because last year he was having a heck of a camp before he got hurt. And, Corey's a young guy that, he's always coming up to me like, hey, like, what do you like? What is a good routine to get into? And you can even ask Corey if you ever chat with him. Like, we always have these conversations, and I'm always telling Corey, like, hey, a little extra 15 minutes in the cold tub is going to help you. Not today, but 2 weeks from now, when we get to the dog days of camp and OTAs and stuff. And getting to see him day in, day out work back to where he was and then surpass that has been huge. He had a really good offseason rehabbing this year. To see him out there moving around, getting with us was awesome. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I've said it once, I've kind of made it known, but Calvin Austin has been, phenomenal. His locker's 2-3 lockers down from mine, but, to see Cal kind of take on more of a receiver role versus just being a gadget guy. Sure. I know he was always kind of looked at as the jet sweep guy and as the gadget guy that, you only bring in on special downs or, whatever you needed from him. But to see him kind of develop into that role of, hey, I can play receiver every down, and to see what he's able to do at OTAs, how he progressed, how he's become a leader, how he's taken all the other receivers under his wing, and, him and GP leading that room, leading that charge. I'm really excited for what, he's bringing to the table and what he's done for that room this year.
That's awesome to hear, man. Yeah, like, I know, like, the long-term subscribers to this channel, man, like, we'll remember how high I was on Corey Trice coming out of Purdue. Like, his tape was so good. I think the only thing that was really a knock on him was just the health stuff. He had a couple of ACL injuries in college, and unfortunately it sucked, man, because I felt like he was going to be one of those steals of the draft last year, and we were going to get to see him play at some point, and then he unfortunately got hurt again. But that's super encouraging to hear that he's doing well in his rehab, because I think that kid's he's got so much talent. And then with Calvin, it's kind of same thing, right? Like, he misses his rookie season with unfortunate foot injury, and I feel like that's some of the things I've had to remind people about too. Is this dude, like, last year was really his rookie season. Like, you got to be
Mm,
patient with him. I still think that he did a lot of real receiver stuff at Memphis, and I'm really excited to see what, he's going to look like in this offense. But,
mm,
really my last question before we wrap this up, because I know I got to get you out of here. You guys made that crazy run down the stretch last season during the regular season to
mm,
get to the playoffs, but you
mm.
get bounced in the first round by the Bills. Why do you think the 2024 version of the Steelers are set up for more success to maybe make more of a playoff push this year?
I think more health, more depth. Last year when we kind of made that run, I think a big thing too is not having TJ Watt, man, and
Absolutely.
that was, it was unfortunate. I know Buffalo was slept a little better the night before because TJ Watt wasn't playing.
Yep.
Everybody sleeps better the night before if they know 90's not in the game, but just more health and more depth this year. Not only just wins you more games and provides you more sustainability longer in the season, but guys feel a little bit more fresher come December and January football. Like you said earlier, not everybody can play 100% of the snaps, right? Not everybody's built to be Iron Man. Yes, you'd like guys like that, but physically with how this game is and the laws of nature, football's just not built for that. You need guys that can share the workload. And the coaches
Absolutely.
are huge on guys sharing the workload here and how the workload is distributed. But you see the depth they got this year. They went on to go sign more guys at every position. Every position there was acquisitions and guys who can play football. I think I was talking with Keanu Benton about it, and he was talking about, like, man, you look at like our nose tackle room, like me, you, and Montrevious, and he was telling me, he's like, we all started football games in the NFL, and that's a good problem to have,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right? You look at the linebacker room, Patrick Queen, Elandon Roberts, Cole Holcomb, all starters in the NFL. You got, like last year before, knock on wood, Quan got hurt and Cole got hurt. But that was a good problem to have. One, because it not only brings the competition on in the room, but two is you got guys that can play. If one guy goes down, another guy can step in. Dean
Absolutely.
Lowry was another guy we signed this year. Isaiah Loudermilk has been, steady. DeMarvin, all those guys, like just having everybody, that can play ball. Getting Dante Jackson through the trade. Dante's a LSU guy. I love hyping him up. But you got guys that have played ball. You got guys that, you're not afraid that, hey, if the starter goes down, I know a Corey Trice, I know a Darius Rush is going to ball out when given the opportunity. You know what I mean? And so to see that, to see everything come to the light, to see the moves the front office has made this year has been awesome. I mean, just look at the quarterback position. You got Russ and Justin
Yep.
Fields. You got a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and you got a first-round quarterback with a high ceiling. You know what I mean? It doesn't get any better than that. And then you got a Pro Bowl kick returner, CP. Things like that is like, geez, every position is set for us to, have a deep run this year and have depth at it and be healthy. And I'm just looking forward to seeing, where it takes us.
Absolutely. Yeah, like that's really been my position throughout the offseason too, is just, I feel like the Steelers process this offseason was really good. Like who knows on how, because you mentioned some of the things that could pop up, injuries, all this different stuff that can happen throughout the regular season that are unpredictable. Like who knows how all those moves will actually end up kind of coming to fruition. But I think the Steelers process was really sound. And you mentioned like just the depth, not just the depth in terms of you have guys in place due to injuries and things like that. But, the Steelers have superstars on defense, right? Like they got TJ, they got Minka, Cam, even Highsmith kind of elevated himself into that territory. But I feel like surrounding those guys with, specific guys who can fill, specialty roles within their own rooms is really valuable. It's something that's not really discussed, in my opinion, enough, is because, you can't have superstars at all 22 starting positions. Like you got to fill the room out to give yourself other advantages and in different ways. But Breiden, I really appreciate you jumping on, man. This is an awesome conversation. I know all of my subscribers are really going to love this video, and you guys make sure y'all go show Breiden some love on Twitter. And I'm really excited to get down there to Latrobe and, see you guys compete. And I can't wait to catch up.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, bro. I can't wait for it either.
Awesome. Yeah. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Like I said, y'all go show him some love just on your way out. Please make sure that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. And I will check you guys next time. Peace and love.